Okay, so welcome everybody again. Thank you for coming. And I see all of you here from all over the world. That's great. We already have 85 participants. And as we just wait for everyone else to come in, or anybody else who is coming, I'm just going to ask you to please make sure that I can see at least most of your torso. And the other couple of things that we want to make sure is that you're muted, if, as we said already, if you're not. And just make sure that you keep yourself comfortable. This is not about being perfect or anything specific like that. So we're going to try to have fun. And if you feel that you have any questions that need to be answered right away, you can mute yourself. So the basic idea is keep yourself comfortable. Try not to push yourselves. And we're just going to explore through movement what we can learn that might help us in our riding and our daily lives. So to begin with, we're going to do what's called a sitting scan. So mostly everybody is sitting. Okay, that's wonderful. So once you're sitting, please try to sit closer towards the edge of the chair as much as possible. A lot of people are very accustomed to sitting back in the chair, but as riders, of course, we want to know that we want to have alignment. And as you already know, the topic today is alignment and stacking over the seat bones. So once you've found yourself in a nice, comfortable place, if you're happy with the height of where you are, the relationship of your legs to your hips. So we don't want our knees too high or too low. So you might adjust that. And to start with our sitting scan, sometimes we do this standing, sometimes laying down. You're just going to try to feel, first of all, what would the print of my pelvis, specifically the seat bones, or just generally, how would that print be if we made a print? What seat bone is heavier? Which one do you feel that would be bigger, the impression of it? Which one would be rounder? Which one more pointy? So it's possible that you feel something different on the left and the right. And if you're not sure, you can take your hands with your palms up underneath your seat bones, and you can try sitting on them, and you can feel with your body weight on top, if you're lined up, what's the shape of your seat bones. And then you can take those away. So now that most everyone's felt them a little bit of where they are, and if you don't feel them quite yet, don't worry, you'll get that towards as we continue. So welcome everybody who's still coming in. That's great. We're already at 103 people. So nice to see everyone. If you're coming in now, please go into the chat area and just let us know where you're from today. So the seat bones, they have more or less of a shape of a rocker. I have a friend of mine here to help. This guy's been around the world, so he's a bit broken. But what we want to concentrate on is the seat bones. So as you can see from, that's the underneath, it's a V shape. So looking at from behind, the seat bones are wider apart from the back side of you and closer from the front. What we also notice is that there's this round, curved shape or a sleigh shape to them, and that's what allows us to rock on them. There are ways to differentiate and describe the back of the seat bones and the front, but basically those two bony landmarks is what you want to think of. And through today's lesson as well, we want to notice as well what our hip joints are doing. So I'm moving now the femur, and you can see how that hip joint, it has a ball and socket joint, so it can make a full circle. And there's going to be some movement there today. The other landmark that we're going to be thinking about is basically the top of your pelvis. A lot of people like to call this the hip or the side. Just really try to separate the hip joint, the top of your pelvis, and of course there's a front side and a back side. You might also want to think about what your tailbone is doing. And we have the sacrum that goes into the tailbone, of course, the lower back. And a side profile of the spine, you see what's happening there. And again, once more, you have this V shape, the pubic symphysis in the front, from behind. And also be curious about this empty area. You know, for some people, that's interesting. So if you joined us a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how the idea of curiosity is one of the main key elements in learning through this method. So it's not so much me telling you what to do or what's good for you. It's just being curious and trying to notice. And as riders, I think we spend a lot of time feeling and noticing our horses. And, you know, when you have that experience of feeling another body, another being, specifically behind you without looking, I think we have a little bit of a gift when it comes to feeling. So we're going to try to refine that gift today. And the first thing I think what I want to do is continue with that scan. So once you've chosen which seat bone feels heavier, notice the height of the shoulder on that side. There has to be, you might be totally even, that can be. But are you shorter on the side that you feel heavier on, or do you feel higher and longer? So I raise my arm if you want to experiment with that. If you raise your arm, do you feel more weight on that seat bone or the opposite one? Both are possible. You can put that down. Raise your other arm, and we want to see again what happens on this side. It may be exactly what happened on the other side in that it was the same side or the diagonal, or you might just be on the right seat bone in both cases or the left seat bone. So just keep track of that and see what happens as we go along. What we're also going to notice is where do we feel in space where our head is? Without trying hard, without puffing yourself up, do you feel relatively comfortable and easy and tall? Or would you rather slouch? And if you would rather slouch, I would encourage you to go back into a slouch position and be comfortable. There's no need to do anything that's not comfortable. Now noticing a few other details, the height of both of our shoulders, and through that noticing, again, what's the relationship with our pelvis in general or specifically the seat bones. We may talk, I believe somebody needs to be muted, so make sure that you're muted. I don't see, but I hear some background noise. So we will talk about the shoulder joint area in particular as well today. We'll talk about the hip joints. And if we think about a rectangular box that describes our torso, you can also think of a cylinder because that's more like it. We're going to be noticing what happens within our box or our cylinder throughout. We're also interested to know about the relationship about the head and the pelvis and how those two talk to each other, as we mentioned last week. So from there, just notice, I believe, oh, let's see, oh, mute Raquel. So anybody else that needs to mute themselves, if you notice that you're unmuted, please do that. Okay, so we're 123 people. Thank you, welcome for those that are coming in late. So all we've done is a basic scan. We've talked about the anatomy, the seat bones, hip joints. You can look that up as well. And the idea that we want to be curious. So once we've done this basic scan and you know where you are in space, let's bring attention to our feet. Which one of our feet presses a bit more firmly into the ground? Maybe even. Also notice if one knee feels higher. And be curious as to what you feel. Do you feel that you're a little bit slouched and shortening, or a little bit the other way from maybe lots of riding with trying to keep your shoulders back? So wherever you are comfortably, we've noticed, and then we talked about our rectangle. If we call this 4 corners, what's the 4 corners in the back of us doing? And within this rectangle, we have an X, and we're going to be curious today as to those relationships. So we've already given a lot of different ideas to think about, but you don't have to remember any of them. You just have to, we have a lot of people, we're 125 people, so we want to be curious of what's good for us and what's interesting to us today. Where's the curiosity? So once you've done all of that, let's tip your head slowly to one direction, maybe to the right or the left, and come back to the middle. And then do that again the other way. And see if there's any weight shifting on your seat bones. Just be curious about that. So that's the beginning of a side bend. And once you're back in the middle, try to see if you have already the beginning of a side bend. Could be, maybe, maybe not. There might be that very minute 1 centimeter beginning of a side bend. The next thing I'd like you to do is look down slightly and round yourself, and then look up behind you and come back to the middle. So that's that front X getting small or back X getting small. So where do you feel? Or maybe it's even. So as you might have noticed, we've talked about dimensions of movement, side bend, we have flexion and extension. And now I would like you to, without thinking, if you had to look behind you, which way would you look today? So give it a try, look behind you, and come back to the middle. And out of curiosity, why did you choose that side? Try that same side again. And when you come back to the middle, try the other side. What's comfortable, what's easier about the first side, or maybe both are comfortable. So we just want to notice the differences. Do those again and keep track of your seat bones. So as you turn to the right, where does the weight shift to, if there is one? As you turn to the left, where does your weight shift to? How do the seat bones move? So this is a big piece of our work, is that we're interested in movement and not posture. So having those landmarks and knowing where we move in space is something that we're curious about. And especially while we're riding, we want to know more or less how we stack, but where are the moving parts and how do those affect our horse? And we're very interested, why is it different on one side and the other? And can we make both equally comfortable and easy? Now, we also want to consider that when you flex or extend, how do you move on your rockers? So we already talked about the landmarks of the seat bones. Can you rock slightly back or rock slightly forward? So flexion, extension, side bend, and rotation. And when you turn, how do the seat bones move? The hip joints, the thighs, the knees, the shoulders. Come back to your middle and do another scan and see if things are a little more clear. If just by thinking about those small pieces in our bodies, perhaps you might feel your seat bones a bit more clearly, a bit more even. Maybe your rectangle is a bit more square and you feel more grounded. If for any reason you start to become uncomfortable under your seat bones, you can give yourself some padding, or if you need to do this standing, you can. Standing, kneeling, these are all options for the same type of lesson. So I see already a couple of you standing. I think that's fantastic that you look after yourselves and just change the lesson a little bit as you need for yourself. All right. So to clarify a little bit more clearly what we're doing and why what we're doing is not exercise and it's not yoga and it's not many things a lot of people think it is, what I'm going to have you do is repeat that movement, keeping in mind already your seat bones, since we've brought that into our awareness. Repeat the movement to look down towards the ground. And then come back up. And this time look up behind you. So one more time, looking down straight ahead towards the ground in front of you, somewhere between your feet. And this time somewhere in the middle, so not turning left or right if it's possible, looking straight up to the ceiling and slightly back. And come back to the middle. So remember this as a reference point. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. Did you perhaps feel that you used different pieces of your body that we talked about earlier? The hip joints, the seat bones, the tailbone, the shoulders? Or do you feel that you did this mostly in your neck and in your head? Neither are right or wrong, but it's something to keep track of. So what we're going to do now is notice if we do this very same movement, thinking about our head going forward, but starting with our nose. So if our nose initiates this movement as if it was heavy and it pulls us down and forward, and then bring it back in space. So trying to keep more or less a straight line. It might be that you go down towards one hip, that's okay. But 12 o'clock in front of you, try. And see what the weight shift is like on your seat bones. But we're also curious to see if we now do this from the back of our head. So if you think of a lady with a big bun or those Egyptian type paintings, the portraits with the head is coming out this way. If you can think of the back of the head leading the movement, how is that different? See if that changes your organization in any way. And compare it again to how you do that with your nose. So if you were to start the movement from your nose and rest for a moment. So already you might have felt that there is a difference just by shifting your awareness. Just out of curiosity, who felt a difference? Okay, so, wow, yeah, so as I would have expected from a group of riders, I didn't see anybody that said no. So we're going to now also pay attention to what the throat does. So you might think about a horse going round and on the bit, not too tight, and then opening the throat. Can you keep that in the background while in the foreground we play with the back of the head going forward and then the back of the head going backwards? Also, if we can, what do the eyes do? Do they come later or at the same time? So there's a certain timing for this. And once you've experimented with that, what's your breathing doing? And without trying hard, this is very, very important. Keep it soft and easy, but could you go 1 millimeter more? And where would that be? So maybe there's some folding or softening at the sternum area. And what happens behind you? Maybe your vertebrae go a bit back. If you were a horse, maybe your withers come up. And now what happens to the front of you as you come up? And where do those withers move to? Now we're going to do this in another way. Bring your arms behind you as if to lean a little bit. So we talked about the rectangle and the X. So right now we've made your front X big. Yeah, so we're leaning there. And do the same movement, starting with looking down with your nose, and then looking behind you with your nose first. Leave your belly to be free. Your front X is big and your back X remains small. Therefore, we're using a little bit of our back muscles and being free in the front. Come back to the middle comfortably. See if you feel a little bit taller or a bit more stacked or a bit more open naturally. If that residue is there and it's something you like. Now place your hands on your knees. So we're not quite rounding, but it's a little bit in that direction. And do the same thing with the nose and the back of the head in the background. Looking down with the nose, the weight of the head, Noticing the folding in the sternum. Where does your tailbone go, the seat bones? And then coming back up to the middle. Looking behind you this time again, using your eyes, your sternum, your breath. What's your tailbone doing? What are your seat bones doing? And come back to the middle. Now, once you've played with that a few times and you notice how you feel, if you feel like getting up for a walk, you can. If you feel like slouching and resting, you can. We're going to check our first reference movement. So not in front of you with the arms, not behind you, somewhere on your sides or maybe on your thighs. Try that idea of looking down and see if it's different. So initially I asked you, how would it be to look down towards the ground between your feet? And do you possibly give this task a little bit more to the whole system? Less in the neck, possibly in your withers, something folding and softening in your ribs and your pelvis moves. And if you're doing a big movement, do it smaller so that you can notice. Maybe thinking about the nose again and the back of the head, and what's the chin doing? We add the chin in right now. And without thinking too much, spontaneously look down to touch as if you wanted to tie your shoelaces, and look up again as if you something interesting in the sky, maybe some birds. Come back to your middle, take a rest. And with a show of hands, please, without having to feel you need to do that, can you show me if you feel that you did this looking differently? Looking up and down, a little bit more involved with the whole system. Wonderful. Perfect. And how is it to be stacked on your seat bones? We started with that scan. Where are we in space? I feel, I'm doing the lesson along with you, all of you. I feel a lot more grounded, more solid. I feel like if I was on a horse that pulled me forward because it's a young horse or it bucks or something, I have a certain strength to me. So this type of strength in our work is called skeletal strength. We're not talking about the muscles. We're talking about the stacking, this balance between the front X and the back X where we're just stacked. So Dr. Feldenkrais used to talk about the skeleton and how it can just keep itself up. And it's actually the muscles that we use that pull us in different directions. But once you neutralize the muscles, everything can just line itself up and you have this free ability to be upright without working hard. So I'd like to invite all of you to please get up, slowly stand up, and first stand up. Notice how you feel standing. Where do your feet? How do they feel? Your shoulders. Maybe the feet feel a bit more grounded or wider. Go for a bit of a walk and look around. See if you can trace what your seat bones do in walk. And is there a connection with movement in your chin, in your nose, in your back of your head, with forces coming through the ground, meaning every time you press your foot, is there getting taller, getting shorter feeling? Please come back to sit down. And as I said, anytime if you're uncomfortable, you need to sit this out. If it's enough learning for today, that's okay. But we're going to keep going for a while. So the next thing that I would like to do, we just now played with this idea of flexion and rolling on the seat bones. We touched on it earlier, but now it's a bit more clear. And also spreading the awareness. So we had the back of the head, the nose. We also had the chin at the end, but also all of these small areas. So often riders tend to be very stiff in the ribs, because our end point is to be tall and open. But a very good athlete we are athletes, when we're riders, we have a full array of movement repertoire that we've been exposed to. And if we haven't, we can expose ourselves to that. By that, I mean, it's not just doing this all the time. So that's where the idea of cross-training comes in. This isn't really cross-training, but showing your body different movements. So if I have a private client that comes to me and they have an issue that they're doing this, we talked a bit about this last week, I would teach them to do this more, how to do it better. And then therefore they're able to help themselves to go where they want. So it's that quote from Dr. Feldenkrais, when you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. It's very simple, but very powerful. So now, because I want to stick with the movement idea and theme, not so much about just how can we be tall and stacked and not moving. So that posture idea is something we don't really try for, but we find it. So I think many of you would feel that you have better posture at the moment. So remember, if you can, the side that you initially turned your head to, and do that once more. And see if it's the same as before, if it's easier. It'll be individually different for everybody. And we're just going to keep and find out again which side was more difficult or not as easy, and do it slowly so you can really notice the differences. Use your breath. What's your nose doing in space? Very good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to improve the side that was already easier. So this is also something unique to our work, that we don't try to always fix and repair where the problem is. Just like I explained, to help somebody be more upright, we might go more in this direction. So it's a very nervous system friendly way where the nervous system doesn't feel corrected and forced and told what to do. And it's a friendly way to learn. So this is what it's about, is we're trying to learn. As you saw, it's not exercise. This is really about learning and seeing options and being curious and playing. And we get our end goal as well. We get that verticalness and the uprightness that we want in our riding. So by attaching ourselves away from the goal or detaching, maybe we get our goal. So obviously, most of you would like to turn better to the side that you felt wasn't easy. But we're going to improve the side that was easy. So how we're going to do that, we're going to continue staring straight ahead while you leave your eyes staring or gently gazing straight ahead, your head straight ahead. Please turn as if you want to look behind you to that same easy side, the first initial side, but leave your head and your eyes in the middle. So if you end up turning your heads or your eyes, don't correct yourself stiffly. So the basic goal is this. You keep looking straight at the screen, but maybe your shoulders turn. If you had a camera on your sternum, maybe the sternum turns. Maybe you notice your belly button turn. We talked earlier about a cylinder. Maybe the cylinder is moving or rotating. Come back to the middle. Again, keeping your head and your eyes directly straight ahead. We're turning with the shoulders, the hips, the seat bones, and back to the middle. Now, please leave your hands on your thighs. And because of you are all riders, I'll use some riding language. You turn to your inside, or the side that you're turning to, and allow your inside hand to slide backwards on your thigh, and your outside to slide forward on your thigh over your knee. And you keep your head and your eyes still to the middle. Come back to the middle. Notice if there was any change of weight on your seat bones. Do you sit more on the seat bone that you turn on, or the opposite? It's irrelevant. There are both options. This time, you're going to allow the head to turn, but your eyes will still keep looking straight ahead. So maybe start with first fixating your eyes, and then maybe think your nose and your ears and your head in general, Everything turns. Is there a timing for this? Maybe then the sternum, further down, further down, further down, the one hip joint, the other hip joint, the seat bones, and come back to the middle. Now, just rest and see if there's any change in your body, any residue. Do you feel like you're already ready for action to turn that way? Some people may experience the opposite. By doing that, they might feel that they found their middle, or possibly the other way. Now for the experiment to show you why this is different and how this brain training works, we created a riddle. We created a difficulty that we're going to do one more time. Hold your head in space as if you're personally deciding, no, you're not allowed to turn, and turn the rest of you. So now only your arms as well are part of this inability to turn, and you really say, no, 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 I need to turn. So we have this internal dialogue of difficulty or riddle that the brain needs to solve. So now that your head is comfortably back in the middle, your arms are down, we're going to go back to our first experiment. Please turn to the same side using everything and see how far you can turn easily and come back to the middle. So by doing this riddle, most of you would have activated different pieces in your body so that you can turn, you can rotate, the shoulders move in space, something happens in the chest, in the vertebrae, there's a certain rotation. The pelvis will not so much rotate because the lower back doesn't do that, but you'll have one seat bone that goes forward in space, one that goes back, one knee that goes forward, one that comes back, and something unique will happen in terms of rotation and possibly side bend. Try that again to the easy side, and don't try to force it. Just see that all of a sudden I can really look far behind me. This is wonderful. And we've spread the work, just like earlier with deflection and extension. What we're after is that all of this is coming from the pelvis. So important for us riders that everything is coming from the pelvis, the movement that comes through the horse. Now, out of curiosity, is it better on the other side? Maybe, maybe not. Do it slowly, do it easily. See if the brain has had the chance to learn from the other side through this experiment. Oh, I see some thumbs up. Wonderful. Yes, I would. That was Mandy first. Oh, and yes, thank you. Wonderful. Okay. So before I forget, I'm going to take a nice picture. I love the thumbs up. Thank you, Mandy, for that inspiration. Would we please, let's see. I'm going to take a picture. I think it's much more fun than a screenshot. Maybe a nice thumbs up, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. So just feel yourselves again and take a bit of a walk. And see if you feel any rotation in your walk. That is one of the planes of movement in walk, in human walk. Riders in general were so obsessed about being square. So if any of you know that dance, the twist, there's a little bit like doing a twist as you walk. The shoulder girdle moves and the pelvis moves. And that gives you a little lightness and softness to your walk. And do the opposite. Just think about walking totally square and perfect dressage position and see, do you end up holding your breath and becoming stiff? It's pretty difficult to smile while doing that, but I think it's pretty natural if we're just playing to start to smile. So all these little connections that happen, you know, the smiling, the ease, the softness, this is all for me how we can have a different relationship with our horses and really develop our seats. Maybe we didn't have the chance to really learn as if we wanted to. I think I'm very happy with my personal journey, but for the longest time I had wished I learned to ride dressage as a child, maybe riding bareback, lunge lines. I didn't get that. I struggled, but my struggle gave me opportunities to learn and to help teach. On that note, I would love to say a warm welcome to Anne-Marie Bélanger, who I had my first ever dressage lesson with, and she's here today, so it's a real honor. So that was 1998, I believe. So thank you for that. And actually, off topic, but I would love to say another special thank you to her. I don't know if you know Anne-Marie, but it was you that I first saw competing at Blainville. It was the interregional championships. I was there for jumping, and she was doing dressage, and my coach at the time said, oh, watch her, she's good. And she was doing something that I believe is third level. M in Germany was called medium one in Canada. And yes, it was very good. And believe it or not, the next person I saw competing in person at the next show, Royal Horse Show in Toronto, was Rainer Klimke himself. So Anne-Marie and Rainer were the first impressions here. So it was nice. Thank you. Okay, so now what we're going to do, back to the seat bones and the pressure. Earlier I had asked you if you feel pressure coming through you as you walk. Please take one of your legs, cross it over, any of them, if it's possible. You don't have to do it if you're a little bit tight in the inner thigh, just something. The reason we'll do this will become clear in a moment. Can you now take your hands on your chair if possible, and at the same time, push with your hands and the foot that's on the ground and see what happens. See if you can use that, not to stand up, but to get a little bit taller. So you can imagine that there's a string on your sternum, and then come back down. What's happening with our seat bones? Try to keep your heads level, so you can think of the string on the back of the neck. So earlier we did tip the back of the head forward and the back, the throat latch. So keep that awareness, the front X, the back X. So we're no longer rounding or arching, we're just trying to travel straight up and straight down. And let's do those things separately. Just leave your arms where they are and press with the foot and let go. See if by pressing with the foot, and if you create a bit of a spring or a pulsing, we're going through one foot. So at the top of your head, you'll see that there's movement. Change legs, do the same thing. This is of course not the same where we're in a wide position with our legs, but by making us narrow, we eliminate the, oh, well, it comes from this seat bone, so it goes to the opposite shoulder or what have you. So the narrow, it's just to create a straight up pressure. So it's not exactly the same, but it's to help you feel the straight up spring to it. So you press with your foot, you have your one leg crossed over, and you use that pressure to push you up. So this is another important concept in Feldenkrais. Sit comfortably. Now with both feet on the ground, press lightly to make yourself just gently get longer, your skeleton. So what does it mean to be long? Can you leave your tailbone, your back? We don't want to arch our back. Can you leave your back from arching by letting go, but still becoming tall? So we're not arching. You might open a bit in the upper body, but we're not arching the lower back. And we're trying to see if we feed this pressure into our nervous system, does it respond this way? So you can try that. Put your hands on your ears, and you can have your elbows wherever they're comfortable. You might, yes, very good. And now just think gently tugging on your skin as you push with your feet and leave your back from getting hollow. Let go and come back down. So most will try to hollow their back. See if you can just pull on the skeleton and back down. Another way to feel this more clearly, the connection with the head and the pelvis, just put your hands in a similar way, but now on top of your head. And gently, but enough that you feel this, think of squeezing your head downwards as if you were a turtle and your head is going down, but there's from pressure. So we're trying to basically create pressure from opposite poles. So the North Pole would be your head. And now as you push down with your hands and your elbows, push with your feet to go through that. Let go of your lower back so that you're not working hard, but that you get, there's a connection. And try the springing again with your feet, and maybe an opposite spring from a diagonal. So if I stay within my rectangle, but I do a spring, maybe I could passage from here. So my chin makes a U shape, my ears make a U shape, my sternum makes a U shape, but I'm within my box. So try it with your arms up, reach with one arm at a time, use your feet, and then come back down. See if you feel different in your box, if you feel a bit more springy and you're feeling you want to be springy. And go for another walk and see if there's any residue of springiness coming through the skeleton from the ground forces. Wonderful. So just sit comfortably and see where you land naturally. Please don't be disappointed if you find it, oh, I'm still on one seat bone, or oh, it's difficult. But I think you'll all feel more clearly what it is that you're doing. And we never try to get on our own case with, oh, well, this is wrong, that's wrong. Nobody's totally symmetrical. And if we can get out of our own way and not work hard to be stronger and to really make ourselves exactly even, maybe we can be more supple. Our horses are also crooked. So if we get on all perfect and now this very supple, but they have their stiffness to them, they don't enjoy it. They really don't. And I'm sure all of you have seen children. Horses are so happy with them, even the bad behaving ones. If any of you are trainers in here, I know many of you are, and even if you're not, I'm sure you've seen this many times. Supple kids with supple minds get on and the horses are happy. So that is another thing. Feldenkrais was very interested in creating supple minds, not so much the body. But again, if we can get out of our own way and not be so stiff mentally and curious and playful, childlike qualities, can this help us? Not only in our riding, but our daily life. So the next couple of things that I would like to do is once you've done another scan and feel if you feel like being springy or you're in a better mood, we're doing a global scan. So I'll leave you to do your scan. We talked about many different landmarks in the body. You might notice, am I smiling a bit more? How does my face feel? How's my breathing? And what's different? All right, so now that we've done various different components, we did deflection, we did extension, we did rotation. I started with a lot of movement because I don't want to finish with or have the idea of posture as the main goal here. We also talked about the differences of how we learn and to be curious and see what happens relatively automatically, quite fast. And it's done in a friendly way where the nervous system would like to go back to it because, oh, this is interesting. I like it. It's fun. Now, what I want to do is also talk about side bend. This is not something that we do very much in our riding. In fact, we stiffen our ribs quite a bit to block that type of reaction. Some trainers will tie people like this so that they should ride and stay in the middle and not be pulled at all by the horse. And I get it. We also don't want to be pulled out of the tack this way, but we need to have our basic idea of where our rectangular box is and how we move within it. You would have within this box in an invisible way, maybe some of this diagonal movement. So if I make it more invisible, it's there, but I still look like I have the posture. In the same way, you might have some flexibility in your ribs, maybe lower down. Some people would say it's a bit like doing ballroom dancing with the upper body and salsa lower down. But there has to be a movement. So what we're gonna do is place any hand on top of your head, just one hand, and very gently side bend and see where the weight shifts to. Leave both seat bones down. So we're side bending, allowing the elbow to lead the way, be soft in the shoulder. And can we soften the ribs on that side? And as you shorten and soften, keeping your head mostly looking straight ahead, so not rotating. So we're purely thinking about side bend, no rotation. And which seat bone wants to come up or float upwards? Which foot would you like to press into the ground a bit more? Put that down, take a bit of a break. Put your opposite hand now on your head, but continue to side bend in the same way you just were. So this is a side bend with the other arm crossing over you. How is that different? Which side gets longer? Which side gets shorter? Which seat bone do you put your weight on? Keep it easy. Leave your other arm hanging by your side and let it drop down the side of the chair. What can you do to make this softer? What does your sternum do? Is there a turning almost like a wheel? Come back to the middle. And now go back to the original arm and see if all of a sudden it's easier to still go to that same side. And come back to the middle. I see a lot of smiles. Fantastic. Take a bit of a break. So I won't give you the answers because this is all about learning and experimenting and trying and being curious and hopefully having fun. But try to keep track of which seat bone did you take weight to, which hip went up, and why and how could it be that exploring it from or shining the light on a different way would make it possible. So one side got short, one side got long. If we had the arm on the short side, we're more likely to focus on the shortening. If we have the arm on the long side, even though we're shortening the right, we're putting the flashlight on the long side. Another way to do this, put you to the same side, put your long side arm up and your short side arm down, and do a little bit with your ear and see if you can do that. Please, while you side bend to the right, turn your head and look at your fingers as you reach. Which seat bone are you on? Come to the middle. Some people might end up on the, you can bring your arms down. And let's play with that on the other side. So we won't go through the whole process, as I want to make sure we have some time. Just bring your one arm up and one arm down. This is also something that we do, is either we do a one-sided lesson or we just skip to the end point. So using your eyes, look at your fingers, reach towards the sky as if there's a balloon pulling you upwards. Shorten the opposite side and shift your weight onto the side that you're reaching. Come back down. Feel your box. What we've worked on just now was a bit of a diagonal connection of pressure. We pressed with our feet earlier, and now you know how to, we talked a bit about passage earlier, how it's diagonal coming through us, right? So when the horse brings its one hind leg forward, the other one comes up to stand, and that's the one we get the pressure through our seat bone. And we respond by it moving within our box, right? So we're not moving everywhere, but we're moving. It's minute, it's soft, it's there. Both arms up now, relatively close with your ears, your arms to your ears. Think of your seat bones, your pressure, your springiness is all there. The alignment, the back of the neck, the throat latch. From that place, press with your right foot, and which arm gets longer? Maybe the opposite one. Come back down, press with your left foot, and come back down. Last detail, we get to pretend to be monkeys. A monkey that's swinging into a tree or from one branch to the other is going to hopefully bring the ribs to the side that the arm is up. Otherwise, it's a not very good monkey and it's probably not going to survive. So we're pushing, one seat bone comes up, and that happens. So try that again. The other side, the monkey, you can use your eyes actually do start the movement. And the reason I talked about the monkey, this is another piece in our work, that what is it in an evolutionary way? Why do we respond to these things? Arms up one more time. Decide if you feel one hand in your mind bigger than the other. What happens if you experiment with, in your mind, imagine wearing 2 boxing gloves, and one boxing glove is all of a sudden giant. Do you respond by reaching towards that side? Come back down. If you're not sure, do it again. Giant and mini boxing glove in your mind. And there will be some reaction. And again, this has all these little wiring stuff, is why what we're doing is not exercise. So please take a bit of a pause, feel where you are. You have rotation, you have side bend, you know where your seat bones are, the pressure. This was a lot of material, so congratulations. I'm proud of all of you. And don't feel overwhelmed. So yes, thank you. I see a lot of thank yous. So don't feel overwhelmed. I wanted to give you a complete lesson. Actually, almost all the lessons or the pieces we did are lessons in themselves. But as I said, as riders in general, we have a lot of capacity for learning and playing and feeling. I wanted to make sure that you see that all of these different planes of movement, the flexion, the extension, the side bending, the rotation. Otherwise, I would have worried that I leave you with, well, I'm recommending a certain posture, put your head there, your shoulders, because none of that will hold up. But hopefully this has made your self-image of yourselves more clear, more vivid. We've awakened some old stuff, even old stuff ancestrally, you know, this just, that monkey idea, it's quite fascinating for me, actually. And the last piece I will leave you with to think about, this is your homework or that I want to leave you with before I answer any questions. If you happen to be a monkey and you wanted to eat, so we'll forget about reins for a second, and you grab forward with food, you would move towards the food. That is what's, again, going to keep you alive. What we see, unfortunately, most people doing is they grab with the reins and lean back against it. So I'm not saying that we should lean forward and pull, but it's curious to know that the reaction in our system is to use our eyes. And as we grab something towards us, it's to bring it towards us. And this has to do with pushing away for survival reasons. And so many things we do in riding are unfortunately opposite of what's internally wired. So it's just interesting to know what's running on autopilot in the background. And then again, to know what you're doing, then you can do what you want. And I think it's to not have those reactions that we pull on the reins. It's one of our main objectives, as Johan said last week, you know, all this training about where is our body, how do we ride, how can we follow the horse. So all of what I showed you today is not to become obsessive, and when you get on trying to feel all that and not being present. This is why I recommend doing it home. So right now we're actually in a perfect time to change our riding. So if you like what we did today, I have actually decided to create a once-a-week class. I don't know how long this will go. So we'll do every Thursday starting with May 7th. And there's information on my website. So we'll do it for 2 months to transform your riding project. And I'd love to see any of you and all of you that want to join. And of course, I have my online courses that were created about 2 years ago. But those are there as well if you're interested. But I would recommend just being curious, playful, notice the moving pieces, you know, let it percolate. I won't be giving a class per se, but on the 4th of May, I'll be on a call with JJ Tate, with Cesar Torrentes, doing some talks, dressage talks that will also be on the USDF website. For those of you who are from other parts of the world, that's the United States Dressage Federation. And also later this month, I'll be on the USDF podcast. So you can follow me that way. But we have a few minutes. If anyone needs to leave, you can, but I've promised to answer some questions. So if anybody has questions in the chat, I will try to see if I can see them. And, oh, very nice comment. Yes, and of course, I will ask you to write down what your thoughts are, what you're feeling. Someone's feeling Eileen, short pace of time, amazing difference. Any other? Oh yes, so someone's asking to do it later in the days. It's 4 a.m. in Australia. Yes, I'm happy to do a different group if there's enough people in Australia. So sorry, Mandy, but I'm glad you joined us, and many wonderful thank yous. But yeah, if you just want to leave one word to say, how do you feel? You know, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but if you feel something that you'd like to share, and questions or, oh, love the perspective to be curious and playful. Thank you. I can't claim that as myself, that's just Feldenkrais in general. Feeling centered and balanced, more connected and in tune. Wonderful. Let's see. Tightness in the seat bone. So the tightness would be that would be more of the tissue. So I would say keep it easy, and to get that to work equally on both sides. Try not to force the issue and let things be. A warm sequence. Whoop, someone saying about a warm-up sequence. Yeah, you could probably do some of this before you ride. Absolutely. Feeling more balanced and centered, working on smiling. That's wonderful. This session brought me in touch with my body and how it reacts to my movement, how it influences the horse will be interesting. Absolutely. And the horses will tell us. That's the great thing. Feeling more centered. Someone maybe being afraid of pain. So absolutely, if there's any pain, then you should only imagine the movement or sit down, lay down. There's a lot, because we don't want to show the body that there's pain, because once the brain says pain, that's all it learns. But if we can do things, oh, comfortable, easy, that's what really we're after. Another agreeing on playful, once again, feeling more straight over the hips, walking through my hips instead of around my hips, really great. Yes, later in Germany, I think earlier, maybe, for Germany right now. Phone died, okay, thank you. Okay, and I will take a question or comment, and I will unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. Mark had a question, so I don't know, Mark V, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
I think that's me.
Oh, so, sorry, I don't see.
My question was, I'm here.
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if you can see me.
Not yet. I'll have to change the page just to make sure that. One moment. If you start talking normally, it should go to you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So my question was, as you're going through these exercises and you can feel that you're sitting uneven, or you can feel heavier in one seat bone versus the other, is that something that you just continue with the exercise and not work towards evening, like trying to get more even, and just be aware of it? Like, will that through the exercises work itself out, or is that through your awareness you can then address it?
Okay, very good question. I think, like most riders, we all want to be right in the middle and be even. But as you've seen today, not being very direct about it, because I don't disagree that we would want to be more even, because that pressure in the saddle, unless there's an anatomical difference, which we can't do anything about, absolutely we can do enough of this type of work to find a more true middle. So very few of us are actually in the middle. So by that, I mean, we might have some kind of side bend that's present. We might have some rotation that's present, or even a twist where you're rotated one way and the other way. You know, so the middle, the true middle, we can do these things to slowly come up to it. And as Dr. Feldenkrais said, something would have to be compelling to make a permanent change. So as many of you felt today, there was a good, significant improvement. And for some people, there will be permanent change. But the recipe more or less is, if you want to make these types of changes, to keep the brain playing and noticing and feeling, you would want to do this, you know, to start this type of work 2 or 3 times a week, and then do that for a few weeks and reduce to twice a week. And then, you know, I do something every day. And JJ Tate, who I'll be doing the talk with later this week, I was talking to her yesterday about what we'll talk about. And like me, during these times, we're taking part in the stable work, you know, so you have a pitchfork, and I know a lot of you do this. The habits that we make, how does that make us uneven? Just as we saw today, we all have to do the work, that's no problem. But JJ will take 10, 20 minutes, as will I, to center and come back to a more of a true middle before getting on our horses. The way I look at it, I don't want to pollute my horse with crookedness when I get on. I want to help, I want to be in the middle. So I need to know my middles. And it's okay, none of us will ever really be in the middle, but if we do our work. So I think in a roundabout way, I would say, more or less, don't be too concerned about it, but keep track of it in the background. So we talk often about foreground and background, because once you get too involved, well, I need that, I want that, we tend to get a bit further away from that. But yes, absolutely, we want to get more to that middle place and doing more experiments, playing. You might wake up and feel a little different, but you know, it depends how you sleep. If you sleep on your side, you'll end up waking up with one short side, one long side. There's so many things. But like I said, where it's coming from can be anything. The seat bone pressure could be how you walked with your parents as a baby. It's really hard to say where it comes from. But yes, we can learn to be available on both sides. So thank you. Good question. Did that answer your question? Good. All right. Thank you. I'll see if there's any other questions. Oh, nice message from Jen Truitt. Horses and humans learn best through experimentation. I appreciate that this method encourages creativity, experimentation, and noticing all habits that are incredibly useful in riding and life. So thank you, Jen. That was wonderful. Jen, I met her in Florida. You can look her up. She's creating some wonderful educational tools of how you can work with your horses, you know. So if you look her up, if you want to put that in, if you have a website, Jen, you can put that in there, and people can look you up. But she's also, of course, a trainer, very well respected, and knows very much about biomechanics. So a great resource if you're near her. Anne-Marie, realize also that I don't walk the same way with both feet, the left close up and the right spread wider. Interestingly enough, it may be from leading horses. So if we have the horse and we're on the left side of the horse and we're holding the rein in our right hand, as you know, we know not to turn too much towards them, but you'll encourage this type of movement. So we talked about this movement in the walk momentarily from the turning. Most riders will have the right arm that swings more back. So we'll be turning to the right, turning to the right. And if you walk that way with more rotation to one side, most people do, you'll hit the ground harder on that side. So if you listen to your footfall, which is a very interesting tool, I'm sure a lot of you listen to the footfall of your horses. When I lead horses to their paddocks, I'll drop them off and I'll pretend to lead the other way, an imaginary horse, just to have that evenness there. You know, and then the evenness there will also affect, you can't have rotation without side bend, or side bend without rotation. So those two go together. But I'm always looking for how can I be more even. So for the last question, I think that helped as well. So thank you, Anne-Marie, for therapeutic wobbly chair. Would it be better to do this on a solid chair? Yes, to do this type of work on a solid chair to get the feedback, but sure, you can play in one of those therapeutic chairs. I also think it's fun to play with for a few minutes. Let's see. All right. Any other questions or comments? Maybe we could hear from somebody. I see some familiar faces. Anybody who's taken my online series would like to raise their hand and share. Leslie, would you be, I'll unmute you. So Leslie, if you don't mind introducing yourself. Hi, first of all.
Hi Dave. Thanks for all these great sessions. They're very educational and really mind-blowing, I think, as far as just getting you opened up to what you have to offer and all the new things that are available to us just by following you, just learning about what we do with our bodies and
thank you,
all that kind of stuff. I learned so much today that even though I've been doing a lot of the sessions over time, every time that that we do one of these things, or I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could move that way, or that I could be observant about what my body was doing and how much better I feel each time. So I mean, it's wonderful, really.
Cool. Thank you. And just because we're all riders, and even though we're patient and we want to cut to the chase, how will this help my riding? So you've been wonderful and sent me messages periodically. So I don't know how your horse is. I've never met her, but we've been in touch online, and I feel like we know each other. So it's wonderful. I saw you're perfect to talk about this. And don't feel pressure.
I get to ride Saturday, I think, for the first time in 6 weeks. So
good.
Our barn's going to start opening up. So
yeah, maybe you'll ride better after doing more of this.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, and any tips or ideas? Having fall, you did the whole course, and you're still doing it, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. What can people look for or expect in their riding? And not specifically with this course, but I think you've played around with Feldenkrais in general.
Well, I think what I do when I'm riding, I just am more aware of, for instance, the diagonal. When I'm going on, say, a 20-meter circle, I'm much more aware of that. And then I'm still working on that sitting trot. Actually, we were really starting to get pretty good at it, and then no riding. So, but I was really starting to loosen up in the hips and get more relaxed in it, I guess is the best way to describe it. And he has the monster gait. His trots are huge. So it's been a struggle, but it was getting easier. So I'm really looking forward to getting that back again. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Leslie. I appreciate that. Oh, and there's Jane.
It's Jean. I wanted to share two really specific things that happened on the next ride after the first time that I did this work with you. Yes. One is
Can I interrupt? Because a lot of people here send a lot of nice messages about your help last week on last week's call. So if you don't recognize her, that's Jean, who was the moderator last week. Thank you again. But please.
Hi, everybody. I'm an adult amateur. I have my first warm blood. I rode thoroughbreds for all of my riding career, and being able to ride that big movement with tons of spring, for the first time I could really access more of my horse's gait scope, because I was able to follow with so much more fluidity. So there was that. And also I have a horse who, if something is moved an inch at home, he's very suspicious, and he can throw a really quick and dirty spook. And something about the relaxing of the abdomen and the letting all of myself down into the saddle, he was going past things, he was more confident, he was breathing, I was breathing. So that was like a marked help.
Wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. The abdominals, the horses pick up on that. they pick up on us holding our breath or having abdominal tension, or whether they need to worry about something coming to nab them. So yes, we'll have active use of the abdominals when it's needed, but having softness there is a general rule. So thank you. Yeah, wonderful feedback. I appreciate that. Someone else, Christina, noticed that when she comes back to riding after a break for several days, she actually rides better, much looser and better able to use my seat and legs. So thank you. Joanne is asking, is there a recording of last week's webinar? Yes, it is on YouTube. If you look it up, you'll find it, but I will put it under the educational resources because we took down the page for the registration. It was there. Realize that I'm also holding breath while doing exercises. Yes, so that's okay. And someone's asking about the dressage talks. Is that going to be live or taped? It is going to be live, but it's also going to be taped and end up on the USDF website and also on YouTube. So I think unless there's any other pressing questions, I will say thank you to everybody. Thank you, and wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day or morning. Thank you. I see a lot of clapping. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. And please feel free to send any questions, or would love to hear what happened with this lesson, how it helped you, and anything you might have noticed. So take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.